Good evening and welcome to Doctors in the House. My name is Dr. Darryl Hill, and it is a pleasure to once again have you back in the house. We've been a little busy and we've been away, but we're glad to be back here with you tonight. And this evening is a special night because I'm going to have my son in the house as we talk about what it's like to become a doctor. You know, we got to talk about high school, college, medical school, and what that whole process is like. So I'm gonna go ahead and just give our guest a chance to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Darryl Hill. I just graduated from Morehouse in the spring of 2019, and I'm applying to medical school right now.
Wow, and once again, congratulations. That's a big deal. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us what it was like for you with this whole process of thinking about becoming a doctor. Why don't you start first with what you thought about college as it prepared you for medical school?
I thought that going to Morehouse was a great decision for me personally. I had a lot of faculty members and professors that really cared about me and cared about my dreams and ambitions, and helped me get opportunities that would later on help me get into medical school, whether that was through summer research programs or just talking to me, lending me a helping hand. They helped me with my coursework whenever I needed pointers on a certain topic. They were always there for me. So
Yeah, that's important too, having those relationships. You know, I can remember when I was in medical school in college, having to take time to develop those relationships. And we're probably going to come back a little bit to that because I want to hear more about the research stuff. But a lot of times when we talk about college and preparing for medical school, we talk about some of the difficulties with classes. So tell us about some of those classes you had to take and what you thought about them.
So for me personally, school wasn't necessarily a challenge. There were some classes where I had to work a little bit harder than others. The hardest class that I took while I was at Morehouse was physiology, which was taught by Dr. Cook. For this class, he had an old school approach. There were no PowerPoints or slides or anything like that. It was just him really talking to the class like a real lecture, which was kind of hard to get adjusted to. And then I had to do a lot of studying by myself outside of class. So that was definitely the toughest class. But other than that, I wouldn't say it was a challenge for me personally.
Because I think it's funny, physiology was, I remember in college, my physiology class, we had a teacher who used to teach at the med school, and I kid you not, that was a medical school level class with all the things we had to learn. But go ahead and talk about, I think there are some core requirements for medical school that you have to take, but you don't have to necessarily be a science major, correct?
Yeah, so typically you have to take general biology, you have to take general chemistry, you have to take organic chemistry, a semester of physics or 2 semesters of physics, biochemistry. Those are, I believe those are all of the core requirements. On top of, I think you have to get up to pre-calculus and take a statistics course, and that's pretty much it.
Wow. So some things never change. I remember the physics. I remember the biochemistry, the organic. And those were some pretty tough classes. So really glad you were able to be successful in those classes. Was there anything about those classes that you might say to another prospective pre-med student that would help them be successful in those classes?
I would say to take them seriously. Take all your science classes seriously starting your freshman year, because like the basics such as general biology and general chemistry, everything comes after that. Even in high school, well really with elementary school with just basic math, it all comes back and it all just keeps building on top of each other. It just keeps building on top of like the last subject that you learned. So I would just say to really take your studies seriously.
Right. Were there any math requirements for you?
Yeah, like I said, you had to take you have to take up to pre-calc for most medical
Pre-calc.
schools.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting too because even when I was going through the process, and even today, I think some people are a little fearful when we talk about pre-med and we start talking about all these tough courses. Why do you think that is?
Because the sciences are viewed as being the hardest, which in my opinion isn't necessarily true. I feel like every area of study is challenging in its own way, but a lot of people don't want to do the math for the most part.
Right.
That's really what it
Right.
is.
And I don't know about you, but it's almost like it's not really hard, but you're told at such an early age how difficult this stuff is, and you can begin to think that and not put the time in. Would you agree?
Yes, I feel like people say it's not hard because not too many people do it, especially African Americans. You don't really see that many that are in the sciences. So
Right.
it's deemed as hard because it's kind of hard to aspire to be something that you don't see. So, yeah.
And you raise a good point. A lot of what we're talking about now is not just the general population, but African Americans. We already know that only 4% of doctors in the United States are African American. And I don't know, do you know what percentage of medical students are African American? Do you know?
No, but I know the number is very low.
Yes.
So,
Based on my information, 7.7%. So very low. And I guess it begins to get into what we're kind of talking about here, the preparation it takes to do well. So we've talked a little bit about college. Maybe, is there anything special about high school that can help prepare a student to be successful in college?
I think it really starts before that, elementary school, middle school, just getting students interested in STEM, sharpening up their math skills, or just their like how they approach their academics.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but definitely like STEM, math. I think it starts with math and just exposing children at a young age to different areas in science and just different areas in general.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I'm glad you said that because what I heard you say was it starts early and the approach, and maybe now we might be talking about study skills and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not always easy though, right?
Not necessarily, no.
Was there anything that worked for you that you might want to share with the audience?
Personally, I'm still working on my study habits, but yeah, I'm still working on mine. But you have to find out what works best for you.
Right, right. And that's the beauty of this whole conversation because as we get older, we can look back at the younger us. Is there anything you know now that if you were going through the process all over again, you'd probably do from a study habit standpoint? That makes sense.
So for me, I was able to get away with just reading the textbook, and like I would study for the test. I would get the grade I needed on the test. Mm-hmm. But if I were to study each and every day and really, like really digest all the material, then studying for standardized tests such as the MCAT wouldn't have been as challenging as it was because it all comes back eventually. So.
Right. And we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the MCAT. But what now we're kind of moving on to is, you're right, it's not just about all the studying you're doing, but the complete extracurricular activities. What kind of activities were you getting into at high school that helped complement your educational experience?
In high school, I wouldn't say that I did anything. Well, actually, no, I did this summer camp. One summer I went to Berkeley for like 2 weeks, where it was like a pre-med program where we had the opportunity to see a live, I think it was a knee surgery.
Oh, wow.
And we got to actually talk to the doctor while he was doing that, which was pretty cool. But outside of that 2 week experience, everything else that I did wasn't necessarily involving sciences or medicine, but I feel like I was very well rounded.
Right. Were you playing any sports in high school? Were you doing anything with the student government, stuff like that?
I played football in high school. I wasn't really that involved, as involved as I should have been with other groups in high school. I think I was a part of, yeah, I was part of a environmental science club. This was pretty interesting. And other than that, I was in Boy Scouts growing up. So,
Did you think you learned anything in Boy Scouts and say football that carried over into the classroom for you, or in other areas of life?
I learned how to hold myself accountable, learned how to earn the respect of my peers, learned the importance of leading by doing rather than by telling. So just getting people to follow me through my actions. I feel like I learned a lot of different leadership qualities that are going to help me throughout the rest of my life.
Right. Now, for those people who've done Boy Scouts, including myself, do you feel like some of those skill awards, merit badges, all that stuff made a difference for you, or was it not a big deal?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think it taught me how to, well, just getting through Boy Scouts, it helped me see the importance and value in like seeing something through to the end and not stopping or not giving up. If you have a plan or you have a goal, just to pursue it until you actually accomplish it. So.
Okay. Good. So, we've talked a lot, and you mentioned earlier about some of the research you did while you were in college. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So yeah, while I was at Morehouse, my freshman year, I had all A's, and I had a good relationship with a couple of my professors in the biology department, and they basically told me about they were talking to me about how I should be spending my summer that would help prepare me for medical school. And there was this program at Vanderbilt University, which was a program where they took about 80 other students throughout the country to come in and do biomedical research. And I had the opportunity to work in a research lab where I was doing prostate cancer research.
Wow.
And afterwards, I was a member of, I became a member of this organization at Morehouse called the RISE program, which was a research initiative that was funded by the NIH. So I had the opportunity to do cancer research throughout the last 3 years of my undergraduate career with Dr. Handy. And then following my sophomore summer, I had the opportunity to go to Harvard Medical School and do cancer research research there for 2 summers in a row. And then I was also a part of the MARC program at Morehouse College, which was an NIH-funded program as well, which funded, they gave me a stipend to do research, which was pretty neat.
Wow, those are great programs. I heard Vanderbilt, I heard Harvard. When you really stop and think about those programs, what do you think you walked away with? What do they really mean to you?
Well, I had the chance to, one, get that experience, go to a place outside of Morehouse where I could show myself, and not just other people, but also show myself that I'm capable of doing whatever I want to do in life, and that if I put in the necessary preparation, then I'll be able to excel in those spaces as well. So.
And you spoke about relationships and how you use your summers for something to build upon your resume. Did you notice that was valuable for you? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Anything else you want to mention about your research or activities while you were on campus at Morehouse?
While I was at Morehouse, I was also a part of this organization called Do Better. which was basically a community service-based organization where we interacted with the youth in Atlanta primarily, and we also we interacted with them primarily through mentorship programs. And I was also a member of the pre-medical fraternity at Morehouse College, which was Phi Delta Epsilon, and I was the vice president of that organization. And then I was also the president of our Biological Honor Society.
Nice. So how much did those things help you as you continued on your path to medical school? What do you think?
Well, with the science organizations, they really helped me develop closer relationships with other people at my school that were interested in the same career path. So it was good to be around them. Then with the community service-based organizations, I just had the opportunity to just to really get to understand the neighborhood that I was living in and get to see some of the good things and some of the things that needed to be addressed in Atlanta as well. So, yeah.
Very nice, very nice. So, one of the big things about preparing for medical school, besides all of what we talked about, will be the MCAT exam too. So, why don't you talk about that whole process of the MCAT?
So the MCAT is the exam that all students have to take. Well, most students have to take this test in order to get into medical school. There's some programs that are out there where you may not have to take the MCAT, or if you have a certain if you come into a certain college with a special type of agreement, you may not have to take the MCAT as well. But really, the MCAT is a very challenging test. It's a standardized test, just like the SAT for high school students, but this is like the SAT for medical school students, and it's pretty challenging because it encompasses everything that you learned throughout your 4 years while you were in undergrad.
So for those who don't know, MCAT stands for Medical College Admission Test, and hard to believe, but I took that test, I want to say 20, 30 years ago. And are you aware of any changes between when I took it and now?
It's much longer now. It takes about 8 hours to take. So
now, why don't you go ahead and share with them how long it takes to prepare for it? What was that like for you?
So I took 3 months to prepare for the test. I probably could have done it in 1 month, 2 months, depending on how you have to know what works best for you. But I know some people that studied in a week or a month, but I feel like a month is too short. Most students will study for about 3 months, but really the truth is that the process started your freshman year,
right,
with the classes that you were taking.
Yeah. So really, it's supposed to be a review of all your science courses, and the reality is, you don't really have a lot of time to study, do you? Because you have your regular coursework if you're taking it during the school year.
Yep.
So that's got to be very difficult. How much did the test cost, by the way?
The test costs, I would like to say, $300.
Yeah, so it's pretty expensive test. Wow. Are you able to comment on what might be considered a good score or a bad score, that kind of thing? And any pointers for people as they prepare for this?
I would say that a good score is whatever score needed for you to get into medical school, which is different for everybody. Most people would say that a 5.10 is a good score, but the truth is that depending on your application and your experiences, you can have a score that's lower than that, or you might need a score that's higher than that. Most medical schools do a holistic review of your application, so that means it encompasses your grades, your MCAT score, your experiences, like jobs, just your story, your reasoning for wanting to go into medicine. So, yeah, your GPA and your MCAT aren't the only thing that that determine if you are going to get into medical school. But there are some schools do have requirements. Usually, that will be anywhere, but the lowest that I've seen is a 494 for a medical school, and typically the schools that do have requirements, they're asking for like a 500 in order to be admitted into medical school.
So you kind of brought up the idea of why you might want to be a doctor, why you might want to go to medical school. What are some of the things that come to mind when you think about personally yourself? What made you want to become a doctor?
Really, for me, it was when I was doing my prostate cancer research project at Vanderbilt University. I was working on the genetic etiology of familial prostate cancer, and my project was really focused on African Americans. And prostate cancer is one of many diseases that disproportionately affects Black men or Black people in general. And I saw that while interacting with my PI, which is the principal investigator, that's basically the person that runs the research lab. He was talking to me about some of the problems that they had with collecting data and getting people to participate in their studies. And a lot of it had to do with the lack of trust with medical professionals from Black men. So I realized that if I was in this position, I could actually make a difference and help eradicate some of these problems and help lessen the gap and health disparities between African Americans and Caucasian people. So that was my reasoning for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we definitely need more Black doctors. I mean, the data says that you tend to have a better health outcome when you have a Black doctor and you're a Black male. We already talked about how 4% of all doctors are African American. Obviously, that number is going to be lower when you think about male females, and there are more female doctors, African American, than Black. So we need you. We want you. So as we approach our first break, we're going to continue talking on this topic because there are a lot of people out there who are future doctors. I can tell you that people are still wanting to go to medical school. The numbers aren't quite like they used to be, but there's still a lot of people wanting to wear that white coat and help keep people healthy. So we're glad you've chosen this noble profession. We're glad you're here today to share your experiences with other people. So tell me, it's very important to maintain a balance in college and in med school. What are some of the things you do to help maintain balance?
I take time for myself. Personally, I like playing pickup basketball. If I'm not doing that, I might be playing on my Xbox or just hanging out with friends. It all depends.
Good. So one of the things we're going to do on the other side of the show is we're going to get into talking about a few health issues that affect our younger people. And we'll talk about all things that might be a little more relevant to young people since we do have you here today. Anything else you want to mention about med school that you can think of?
Not right now.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Let's go to our first break. See you on the other side. You gotta get used to this music.